Good evening. General Motors and the United Auto Workers have announced tentative agreement on a new 3-year contract, an agreement that would end the strike, which has now threatened the nation's economy for 58 days. Bill Plant was on hand when the formal announcement was made in Detroit.
This morning, toward the end of a 25-hour nonstop bargaining session, it became plain that agreement had been reached in the 58-day-old strike. Union President Leonard Woodcock, appearing tired and a trifle snappish, would not elaborate on details.
As has been announced in a joint statement by the UAW and the General Motors Corporation, a tentative agreement has been reached covering the United States plants of the General Motors Corporation, and at the union's request, details of the settlement are being withheld pending our report to the International Executive Board and to the General Motors National Council.
Both of those board meetings were held, but were quickly recessed until tomorrow to allow the union time to print the complex proposal. So no details have been announced, but sources say the contract calls for a 30% wage increase over the next 3 years. In addition, the union apparently won its demand for a return to unlimited cost of living increases, as well as a modified version of retirement after 30 years. Already, the rumored first-year wage increase of 51 cents an hour has been denounced by some in the union as too low, while the total cost of the package was decried by GM negotiator Earl Bramblett.
I would say that the cost of the settlement is substantially more than the anticipated increase in productivity of the country, and this, of course, is true of the general level of settlements in recent times. Well, that's a definition of a general definition of inflation.
CBS newsman Bill Walker talked with rank-and-file members outside a local union hall.
How do you feel about the prospect of going back to work?
Well, I'm ready to go back myself. Of course, like everybody else, I'm with the union. If they want to stay out, we stay out. I'm making it, I'm surviving. Everybody else, all the same. But I'm ready to go back to work.
Well, I feel real good. I'm glad in the way that they did strike to get what they want, but I think that we got good union leaders, and I believe sincerely that they've done the best they could, and if it's a good contract, they'll accept it. If it ain't a good contract, they'll reject it. And I have been very fortunate. I was happy that I could get along, and I hope they'll continue along, and as long as the strike stays, well, I have to just go along with it.
We all is hoping that this 30 an hour, which I think is one of the great issues we really need, because there's many people that work for the company that can retire and have time to, a few years to enjoy themselves and make jobs for a lot of people that is out in the street now need jobs. I think that is one of the greatest.
The strike against General Motors really isn't over yet. The agreement must first be ratified by the International Executive Board and by these men, the members of the union's GM Council. Once that happens, approval by the rank and file is almost certain. Even then, it will be a matter of several weeks before production can begin again and before 400,000 members of the United Auto Workers can start getting paychecks. Bill Plant, CBS News, Detroit.
Today's agreement does not cover GM plants in Canada. Those negotiations will continue. Initially, at least, the Nixon administration does not seem to share General Motors' fears of possibly inflationary features in the settlement. In Washington, while admitting he didn't have the details yet, Labor Secretary Hodgson said he was delighted. And a spokesman for the President's Council of Economic Advisers said the administration hoped the resumption of production at General Motors would help a great deal to get the economy back on steam. News of the tentative settlement caused averages on the New York Stock Exchange to soar at this morning's opening. The Dow Jones Industrials jumped more than 7 points on heavy volume in the first hour of trading, but then the rally quickly ran out of steam.
The leadership of the United Auto Workers tonight is telling its members to approve a new 3-year contract with General Motors, and it looks as though the auto strike is over. If the union membership approves the recommendations of its leadership council, GM will be back in business by December 1st. The new contract calls for a 3-year increase in wages and fringe benefits which would give the auto workers an extra $1.80 an hour and would cost GM in the third year an extra $1.5 billion. The union says it is not satisfied, but it feels that these gains must be weighed against the hardships inflicted by the 59-day-old strike.
Pickets who did not like the proposed GM contract with the United Auto Workers Union were walking their lines this morning when local union officials from around the country arrived to be briefed on yesterday's agreement. The union's 350-man GM council may reject any contract agreement, so President Leonard Woodcock led the men carefully through the provisions: a first-year wage increase of 51 cents an hour, unlimited cost of living adjustments, and a modified form of the 30 years to retirement demand. The pickets moved inside but could not enter the meeting. They were from two Detroit area rebel locals which have little effect on total union policy. They thought the wage boost should have been more and that the age limit on 30-year retirements should have been removed. Some of the officials inside the meeting also had doubts about the agreement, but when it was all laid out and explained, they accepted the leadership's claim that the union got from General Motors all there was to get, and they did not veto the settlement. That would have been too expensive. At first, General Motors offered the union 38 cents an hour. The union men demanded 61 cents, and they struck. If they had accepted GM's 38-cent offer and stayed on the job, the average man would have made $1,400 by now in total wages. But with the strike, they lost $1,400. For the last 8 weeks, the strikers' only income has been $320 in benefits. So the 8-week strike has cost each man $1,080. When they go back to work, they'll get 13 cents an hour more than they rejected in September. After a year, they'll get an additional 2 cents more than they rejected, and in the third year, another 2 cents. But with all the increases, they will make only $936 more in the next 3 years than if they had not struck, and the strike cost them $1,080. Net loss on this 3-year contract, $144 per man.
All that, of course, is subject to ratification. The strike goes on until local union members around the country vote to accept permanently what their representatives have accepted for them conditionally. Steve Delaney, NBC News, Detroit.